Step forward. Who are you?
I'm Fish Wizard. To start off, I made this character as a Breton and named them Summoning because this is a summoning only run. In that I can only deal damage via summons. If you haven't played Skyrim before, don't worry, I will be explaining the story because I plan to do more videos on this. Now, we're about to be executed, but get saved from the axe by a dragon. This dragon will be important later. But for right now, all I need to know, dragon is here, saves us, we gotta leave. Unfortunately, part of that leaving requires us to very slowly walk out of here and up this stupid tower. Now, I had to stop and fix my controls because I hadn't played this game outside of VR in about 5 or 6 years. Luckily, we run up the tower, we get away from the dragon menace for a moment before he decides to attack once more. And so I'm going to use a bit of this time to not only explain what's going on, but to explain what's happening in the run. So I said this was a summons only run, and that's not necessarily true. A large part of this run does have to use certain spells that aren't damage dealing, but that inflict certain status effects on other things. For example, we're going to be using the Frenzy spell quite a bit. The Frenzy spell just aggroes enemies, or aggroes anything actually, but doesn't actually deal any damage. And so we're going to have to use that in some points to entice enemies to attack us, or to attack one another. The other kind of spells we're going to be using are restoration spells. Stuff like healing. There's a spell coming on later on called Healing Hands. Super important. Basically saves the run. At this point, we have to choose which side are we going to pick. The Stormcloaks or the Imperials. I decided to side with the Stormcloaks. They're a sort of resistance faction to the Imperials. Ultimately, this won't really matter, but for the start of the run, kind of important, as if you side with the Imperials, you lose out on access to heavier armor that provides more protection. And since I only have one spell to actually protect me right now, we kind of have to pick them. So we only really have 2 spells right now that we can really use. We have Healing and Conjure Familiar. Conjure Familiar is going to be the lifeblood of this run up until about the halfway mark. Healing helps a bunch, but Conjure Familiar is our only way to deal damage, and it basically just summons a dog to attack enemies. The dog does not have much health, and we basically just have to spam it until they die. After a bit of brief looting and running away, we make it down into the lower dungeon, where you can see the dog kind of dies to 1 hit. Generally, you can only get a couple bites in before it's basically kicked the bucket, and it also has a 60-second timer for how long it's allowed to live. After picking the lock on this cage in the dungeon, we decide to get a hood that increases our magicka by 30 points. We also take the robes, but the robes aren't going to be as vital as they are later on. Due to the limitation with the dog and everything, we're basically forced to run away from most encounters at this point. And this will be a problem throughout the majority of this run, is these summons have so little life and such a short span that they can actually be here, that majority of the fights results in either the dog being killed or, us basically having to sit in a corner the entire time and just spam dogs at them. Thankfully, with the power of editing, I can cut out a majority of the fights. To fill you in on the story, though, we've escaped the dragon for the most part, and are trying to make our way past Imperial forces. However, due to some unforeseen side effects of running away from my execution or whatever, we are being pursued by not only the Imperials, but the local wildlife. Thankfully, due to my stronger legs and ability to summon a dog with my hand, I escape the dragon, and the dungeon, and the Imperials, and make it outside to Skyrim proper. I'm given the option to start this in survival mode, which adds heavier food, heavier stuff, makes it to where you need to eat and drink, but I have that turned off for this run, as it's already going to be a long enough run, and adding extra challenge is not going to make it more interesting. It's just going to make it take longer. I quickly wait for Rayloff to spawn, and we part ways almost immediately. I don't plan to do the Civil War questline in this run, and I almost immediately decide to go to a place called Bleak Falls Barrow. If you haven't played Skyrim before, Bleak Falls Barrow is the starting dungeon that you have to go to. With it, it is tied directly to the main story, and it's a core place to find an important piece of stuff for this run. Without it, we would basically have to come back here. And so I'm going to try to get it as soon as possible. And you could see me really struggling to get up this mountain. After fighting some bandits and miscellaneous rats, I essentially... I should have just taken the proper path, but there's more bandits on that road. And frankly, I didn't want to do it. I was so stubborn on getting up this mountain that it ended up wasting more time than it would have saved. But ultimately, getting up to Bleak Falls Barrow was the main annoyance. Once I had it discovered and marked on my map, I fast traveled down to Riverwood, where we end up buying our first couple spells. We're selling off a lot of the garbage that we had picked up to make more money so we can buy these spells due to their insane prices. But I end up buying a spell called Raise Zombie. Raise Zombie and Fury, that one's important to mention too. But Raise Zombie is going to be a pretty crucial one, as it gives us basically another summon. The cost of that one is that whatever body you raise up, once it's done, it's gone. It turns to dust and cannot be re-risen. Unlike the dog. The dog can be cast over and over again. With Bleak Falls Barrow here, we have to fight our way inside. It's not super easy. There's about 6 or 7 enemies up here, and they can all basically instantly kill the dog. So we're having to whittle them down with Frenzy to make them attack their friends, and using the dog to repeatedly attack people. With this, Bleak Falls Barrow is important because it has what's called a Dragonstone. Dragonstone, honestly, in the story, does not have much of a purpose other than it being a quest item. It's here solely to have kind of busy work and show off the important parts of a dungeon. This is the part I wanted to show off with Raise Zombie, right? Raise Zombie brings him back. He grabs his weapon and, starts fighting again. So this will let me bring back more powerful enemies, again for only 60 seconds, but can make it to where it's really powerful. Unfortunately, with a zombie active, I can't then have a second summon, as he instantly crumbles to dust. But this fight took about 30 minutes of hiding behind rocks. There were 4 or 5 bandits inside, and trying to maneuver my way around them was incredibly difficult. This guy in particular gave me the most trouble, as he took 11 dogs to kill, which is just utterly ridiculous. And, worst of all, I couldn't even use him as a zombie because I fucked up and accidentally evaporated him. So, important part I want to mention, spiderwebs. Spiderwebs, there's not a way to destroy other than by punching. Maybe through glitches you could do it, but I'm trying to avoid glitches in this run. But this was one of the main fights, was trying to defeat this frostbite spider. So I had to get kind of creative, and I decided to use a frenzy spell. You can see, though, summoning a dog, the dog basically gets taken out almost instantaneously. It got like 2 or 3 good bites in here, but ultimately, it kind of just had to whittle it down. This is almost an hour of footage that's been condensed down into a 45-second clip. But I hit it with Frenzy, and through a kind of weird interaction I didn't know about until I kind of just used this out of options, Arvel, the guy we were supposed to cut down, decides to jump out of his spider web that was keeping him prisoner, jumps and attacks it. He then promptly screams, "Help me, I'm stuck," and I have to break the spider webs again with my punching. Now, Arvel is in possession of an item we need for the story called the Golden Claw. Golden Claw is used to unlock doors in dungeons, and it's not super useful outside of one dungeon, and there's a quest associated with it. But I need it. He has it. I want it. And so I hit him with Frenzy, hoping that the dog would do slightly more damage. Turns out, no, dog is basically useless against him. So I decided to just start booking it. Frenzy only has a 60-second duration, and there are things called Draugrs down here. A Draugr, it's kind of like a zombie in that it is a restless soul in the lore, and they are prone to wandering. So the dungeons are built to keep them in as like a crypt, and I end up leveling up. I'm putting all my points into magic, and we take our first point into conjuration, which lets us cast spells at half cost. Well, cheap spells at half cost. But in our Draugr escapades, we have to try to escape. There's a swinging axe trap that I've been trying to bait people into, because the dog is just not working. Now, I don't really count traps and such as damage from me. Sure, I might be baiting them into it, but it's not me physically doing the damage. Now, this is the end of Bleak Falls Barrow. This has taken about 2 hours to record at this point, and this is where you get the first shout. And so we loot, a Staff of the Familiar, which I thought was going to be super helpful. Turns out almost completely useless, as I can just cast it. I thought maybe it'd be nice, like a faster way to level it up. No, not really. And it requires it being charged. I'll be 100% honest. This was the part of the story where I was super worried this wasn't going to be a viable run. So I grabbed the shout. This is the shout that is most common with the game, and we're entirely not allowed to use it, except for in one story scenario. But we use the dog to try to count, and you'll see how many dogs this takes. Actually, I'm going to put a dog counter on the screen. Congrats to dog number 9 there for taking out the Draugr Overlord. So to explain, this is Jarl Balgruuf. He's the leader of Whiterun, which is one of the main starting settlements that we go to. Now, he's the one who tasked us to get a stone for this guy. This is Farengar. He's the court wizard. We don't really need to know much about him, other than Balgruuf sends us and tells us there's another dragon. So, to fight this other dragon, guess what? We throw more dogs at it. Now, this one wasn't as bad because there were more Whiterun guards to spam arrows at this guy. But it did eventually just come down to throwing dogs at him. It was not a super fun fight, as dragons, they can fly, they can breathe fire. So majority of this fight was spent with me cowering in a tower, spamming dogs, and hiding back in the tower. Hence why we're not showing much footage of it. But eventually, dog number 20, 30, does a little victory howl for us, and gets the kill. To explain some of the story. Dragons have come back. Dragons haven't been seen for a long-ass time, and we're kind of here to help protect them. We end up absorbing that dragon's soul, and we hear a weird voice from the mountains. We go to talk to Jarl Balgruuf. Balgruuf tells us, hey, yeah, those guys are like masters of this voice. So he sends us out to go train with them. Now, this part was for grabbing a stone that I thought would be really helpful called the Ritual Stone. Lets you raise unlimited zombies once a day. Really powerful. Ended up not really working out with the run because it's very rare that many dead bodies are near me. And I honestly, I put so much faith into this rock. It didn't hurt, didn't help. But back to the story. So we finally head up this giant mountain to talk to these guys. These are the Greybeards. They're masters of speaking, like dragon speech. And unfortunately, we do have to use a shout that does deal damage on them. So no, you can't technically beat this run without dealing damage from stuff other than summons. However, I'm not super broken up about that. Basically, most of this part is just they teach you how to shout at stuff, and we're not allowed to use it. But they're really well-respected people in the Skyrim world, as they're all very old and have magic powers. They're kind of wizards, but not like mages. But they teach me how to run real fast. It's not a super useful shout either, so I don't use it much. But upon returning to Whiterun, we get attacked by some cultists who are immediately murdered by the police here. But lucky for us, the robes are really good because it makes our mana regen much faster. So I take those. I take the mask too, just to sell. So the Greybeards tasked me with going to find the Horn of Jurgen Windcaller. Now, the Horn of Jurgen Windcaller is not actually there. It's been nicked by somebody named Delphine. Delphine is a member of an ancient anti-dragon group called the Blades, and should be super helpful. But, as you'll see, a lot of this is just going to do fetch quests for her. I kind of dislike her, just because I dislike her quests, and she's kind of more annoying in the story. I don't like the Blades, actually. That's just a weird little quirk here. But we end up heading over to Winterhold, and I need new spells. So, there's a place called Winterhold. It's got a college there, a college for mages. So, my goal was to get into this college, grab some spells, and hopefully make it out of here with some halfway decent spells. So, we end up getting Conjure Flame Atronach. This summons a much stronger creature than the dog, and it exclusively deals fire damage. Not super worried about it, but I get some extra healing. I get one called Healing Hands. It's the one I mentioned earlier. But we're then tasked with killing a dragon. Another dragon. Solo this time, kind of. Delphine's here, but Delphine gets pretty wounded early on, so it's just our Flame Atronach now. Now, looking back, probably should have grabbed a Frost one, considering it might have done more damage to the dragon. But the Flame Atronach ended up serving me pretty well. But, to explain some more of the story. The Greybeards tasked us with going to get this horn, and Delphine has it. She wants us to help her figure out what this one faction knows about the dragons. They're called the Thalmor, they're elves. If you haven't played Oblivion in Skyrim, they are basically the rulers of the continent that Skyrim is a part of, is attached to. But Skyrim is in open rebellion against that. And so Skyrim's in the midst of a civil war, which I mostly ignore for this entire run. Now, there's a Civil War questline. I think the story to it is kind of It could be better. But that's a story for another time. All you need to know, Skyrim is undergoing a civil war. There's dragons now. And with this, we're kind of stuck in trying to decide who's going to come out on top. And it's our job to make sure it's not dragons. Now, an important part of the story is that we're something called a dragonborn, meaning we can absorb the souls of dragons and use them to speak in the language of dragons. So as you see, we killed this dragon. We're taking its bones because we can sell them for a good bit. But after we kill it and absorb its soul, I bought some new spells. I bought just another faster healing spell, and we meet up with Delphine. She basically says, "Oh, hey, I need more things for you. Another fetch quest." So Delphine's worried about the Thalmor. She's wondering what they know about the dragons, and are they the reason that the dragons are coming back? Have they found a way to bring dragons back? So she tasks us with breaking into their embassy under the guise of a party. And to do that, we have a contact who's there to serve drinks at the party. I normally give this guy a bunch of my powerful stuff because he can smuggle in the items for us. Obviously, since this is a magic run, there's nothing for us to give him. And so he kind of just exists for us to serve drinks. And there's one bit where he'll cause a distraction. We decide to meet up with Delphine as she gives us a fancy set of clothes to wear to the party, which devastating for me considering most of my magic powers come from my clothes, my regeneration, and I get extra magic from them. But we decide to give this guy a drink to cause a distraction so that we can have a distraction so we can escape from this party and figure out what they know. To achieve this, I give him a drink and I sneak off into the back rooms. After a good while of sneaking around, we end up finding a journal that is labeled Esbern's dossier. And this basically just tells us, hey, they know about one of the members of the Blades and that he's still alive, and that he lives somewhere in the sewers in Riften. So I bring this back to Delphine, tell her this, and she is ecstatic that he's still alive. Basically dispatches me to go get him as soon as possible. Now, up until this point, I hadn't actually been to Riften in this playthrough, so I had to go all the way out of my way, find us a coach, hop into the coach, and drive there, only for when I get to the gate, a dragon to attack and bug out the guards. Didn't attack me, but flew close enough that the guards immediately got sidetracked. Annoyingly, I had to basically reload from a good bit back, get the gate open and get in, and then redo a lot of this. This built up a lot of frustration, so I ended up taking it out on a character I just really despise. And she's called Grala the Kind. She's an orphanage owner, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to explain. I dislike her. It usually starts an assassination questline. And yeah, you don't get a bounty if you kill her. But after leaving this, I decided to go down to find Esbern, crawled through the sewers for like an hour, and he unlocks about 1,000 locks and tells us, hey, yeah, I'll come back with you guys. Yeah, it's not the most fun either. Now, I gotta say, I hate Esbern. I hate him so much because after you rescue him from these sewers, you have to then escort him all the way across the map to get to Delphine's cabin. Or inn, I guess. And that took so long, and I was already tired because getting into the sewers and everything, I got lost and couldn't find him, and it took so long, only to be met with having to then chase him across this thing, and we kept getting attacked by stupid bandits. Thankfully, I bring him to Delphine, and from there, they say, hey, let's go reclaim the temple for the Blades. It's called Skyhaven Temple. It's up in the mountains, and it generally would have been a nice walk if I hadn't really struggled with getting up mountains. But we get up here, and they're almost immediately like, hey, this requires a blood sacrifice to open the door. So after a quick hand stabbing, the door decides to open, and we're stuck with all of this is done so that we can kind of get some kind of prophecy to tell us how to kill Alduin. Alduin's that black dragon from the beginning. If you recall, he saved us from execution, and the way that we pay him back is by killing him. To be fair, he is an evil dragon who's bringing about the end of the world, and we find that out by going to this wall. This wall has a prophecy inscribed on it of some ancient Nords who were the original inhabitants of Skyrim. And they used a shout to kill him the first time, or so we think. And we now have to go and try to learn that shout. So, we meet the leader of the Greybeards, whose name is Parthenax, and he teaches us, hey, that's not a shout that I made. And it's a human-made shout. So, we have to hit him with fire, though. As a weird dragon befriending ritual, we have to hit him with some fire. We then have to talk to a crazy guy named Septimus, and he tells us, hey, there's a thing you can get called an Elder Scroll. The Elder Scroll will let you see into the past and see how this shout worked back in the time that it happened. Because the area where Alduin was killed was weak, sort of in time. And so he tells us, hey, the Elder Scroll is down in a place that's underground. It's really annoying to get to. I straight up just ran directly through this area. I did not fight anything. I mean, I did, but very minimally, and ran past it. I got the Elder Scroll. And we take it up to the Tear and read it. So to briefly explain what an Elder Scroll is, would take forever. But essentially, this one just lets us see back in time. Lets us see what happened here in these events a while back. And we find out that the Nords that were here didn't actually kill him. They just sent him forward in time to us. And so they used a shout to pull him down to the ground and force him to fight on sort of equal footing. And that shout's called Dragonrend. Now, luckily for us, it doesn't deal damage. And so we're going to use it to defeat Alduin. Luckily, right on time, he shows up. Now, this was, I think, one of the longest fights I had. Alduin is pretty strong, and I was not super well prepared. I thought there was an extra step when I was coming to fight him. So it was basically just spamming the Flame Atronach and hoping that I could land Dragonrend consistently. Thankfully, for most of this, there's a giant rock I could hide behind and just peek out to cast the spell. This was basically the strategy for most of it, was to cast the Atronach to draw the attention away, heal up party snacks, and run back and do it all again while I wait to heal. This is not the most enjoyable fight. If you were watching the stream, I feel so bad for you. This was deeply annoying to watch. Now, when it came to the very end of the fight, I ended up ruining the shot by getting hit in the face with a meteor. And I was honestly pretty disappointed. Now, Alduin then decides to retreat and fly away from us. But this leaves the question of how do we chase him? We can't fly because we're not a dragon. And so we ask Party Snacks, and he tells us that we have to trap a dragon and learn how to get there. We also learned that he ran off to a place called Sovngarde, which is essentially Nord Heaven. Think Valhalla, kind of. As much as I would like to just trap a dragon, we have to talk to the Greybeards, and the Greybeards basically say, oh yeah, we can totally trap a dragon. All you gotta do is convince the Jarl of Whiterun, and once you convince him, should be super easy. You can just trap it, make a deal with it, and that dragons are super boastful. You should be fine. Unfortunately, to do that, the Jarl immediately refuses and says, I'll only do it if the war is at a standstill. And so we have to go to Jarl Ulfric Stormcloak, who is the Stormcloak leader. And we also have to go to General Tullius, the Imperial leader. Mr. Stormcloak only agrees because if the Imperial guy doesn't go, he'll look like a bitch. And if the Imperial guy goes and he doesn't, he'd look like he was terrible. And so General Tullius basically also agrees because if he doesn't show up, then he looks terrible. And it's a whole thing. You can honestly skip this entire section if you just win the Civil War, but there was no chance of me doing that with just the summons I have right now. And I didn't feel like doing the entire DLC to get more summons. But we eventually get their approval and meet with the Greybeards again, who agreed to host the Peace Summit. Now, this was possibly one of the most boring parts of the run, because it's essentially a long cutscene with unskippable dialogue. I don't like the end of these runs. I think they're kind of long, and a lot of the points are not super exciting for a game all about combat, but this part especially. Eventually the peace talks finish, and we're allowed to go capture a dragon, and all we had to do for the cutscene was give some land over to the Imperials, give some land over to the Stormcloaks, and they basically go, okay, we'll stop fighting. It's so dumb. But we call out a dragon and decide to capture him, and this is possibly one of my favorite moments for when I'm playing in VR, because I like walking directly up there and you could just see the dragon yoink somebody away. But we lure the dragon into our trap by simply using the age-old technique of walking backwards and using ourselves as bait. He basically promises to us he won't eat us in exchange for freeing him, and he'll take us to Sovngarde. Unfortunately, I didn't end up capturing the moment that I ran into Sovngarde. My technique was basically sprint full speed and don't fight anything and solve the puzzles as fast as possible. It ended up working, and I sprinted directly through the portal and then realized I had forgotten to record. But after he promises again, takes us over there, and he realizes that he's not going to stick around because he's betrayed Alduin, and so the second he lands, he just flies away and doesn't help us. Now, I do like to consider that if he did attack anyone, he was summoned by us through a shout, so he would have been a valid option, just in case he did eat anything on his way there. However, like I said, I sprinted straight through this area, and wound up in Sovngarde. Now, I was so excited for this part. There's a part where you have to fight a guy named Sun, and I was like, I love fighting him. Normally, it's a really awesome time to just beat him up and have fun. And I was excited to see, like, how's this fight going to go? Who's going to win? Is it going to be me with my summons? What summon's going to beat him? And only for him to get taken out by the Flame Atronach. I was so disappointed. He does take out one of them, to be fair, but I thought he was going to be so much more challenging. The fact that he got taken out by two really goes to show, one, how strong this Flame Atronach is, and two, how low level we are. I think by the time I completed it, I was only level 7. And one of those levels came midway through the fight. But with Sun defeated, we can go and gather some heroes and face Alduin. Alduin starts pretty badly wounded because he had taken some extra hits from the fire while midair. But this fight was not super hard. It's kind of a 5-on-1, I guess. I'm here running support, and my general strategy for this was to summon the fire elemental and run over to anybody who was down and use Healing Hands, which Healing Hands heals the person that you're near at the cost of your magic. So you're standing there using the magic, basically being a target for them. Using Dragonrend, I'd bring them down, they'd wail on them for a bit, I'd heal, and ultimately we ended up managing to kill him in a pretty record time. I think this is one of my faster kills of him. It only took about 15 minutes. It was super short in comparison to some of the other runs I've done because he scales with your level. But to demonstrate why we weren't using any melee attacks, I have to deliver the final punch, and you'll see it's a good wallop. I mean, one punch taken out a dragon is pretty rough. But the actual reason we have to punch him is because it's required by the game to finish the game. They basically don't want AIs taking the final kill from you, as it's meant to be the Dragonborn doing the final hit. But with that final punch, the run is over. And as a sweet little reward for killing Alduin, beating, the entire prophecy, we get a ability to summon one hero from Sovngarde. But with that, thank you to my friends for helping me out, and thank you for watching.